Good afternoon, everyone. This is Chad Hill, and I have Adam Stetzer on the phone.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the webinar today.
And today we're going to be talking about phone disposition and CRM, some more sales features that we've recently added into the system. So without any further ado, I want to walk through kind of the evolution of our sales tracking. Back in 2009, in December of 2009, we added the phone tracking script and tracking phone numbers into the dashboard at the time. And if for those of you who've been around a while may remember that there was a bit of manual setup that sometimes getting tracking numbers would take a few days, maybe even a week, because we were working with the telecom company to get a phone number and provision it through to the dashboard. So it was a pretty arduous process, and that over time just was not something we were too happy about. So in January of 2012, we did a significant upgrade to the back end, and which is the current system we're using now, where you can actually provision, search for numbers online and get them provisioned and set up in real time. You can do all of your setup of where the number is going to ring, in addition to things like setting up a whisper, recording phone calls, and even setting up your upfront disclaimer statement. So that was something that, again, we did in beginning of this year. With that, we also added the ability to add labels to your phone numbers. So that was a way that if you had a very specific thing you were tracking, that you could actually just add a label right to the number so that when you saw it in the reports, you would know what that referred to. So that's, I think everyone's been very happy with how that's worked out. It's streamlined a lot of our processes, and the number of phone numbers that we're issuing and that people are using has gone up significantly. So that's been a great feedback to Adam and I in terms from a product development standpoint. But we didn't want to stop there, because as we've gotten more adoption of the phone numbers and people using this to track sales, we've realized that we wanted a better way to integrate that information and report on it in the dashboard. And so we released earlier this month, and this is our first webinar to kind of roll it out to everyone and train people on it, phone disposition, and along with that, a CRM tool that actually streamlines the basics of a CRM, and is something that we hope that more of your customers will use. And again, the reasons for doing that are because the more you can get your customers in your dashboard, your private label dashboard, the stickier your services become, and we hope leads to better retention. It also gives you a lot more stuff to talk about when someone says, my campaign's working or not working. You're going to have a lot more information to actually react to that and help them out. And actually, one final note on that, it's actually led to even potentially another opportunity for you as a service, which is sales coaching. We've had a number of our resellers who are now listening to sales phone calls with their clients and are using the dashboard as a way to actually help train their people to better sell the service, their services, their products of their clients. And again, it gives you just a whole other thing to talk about when you sit down to have those monthly account review meetings on why or why not your online marketing campaign is working. We have plenty of evidence to show that in a lot of cases it's because the people, when the phone does ring, their sales agents or their staff aren't very well trained and aren't dealing with the phone calls very well. So it's a whole other opportunity for you to get in and potentially help out your clients.
Yeah, that's a terrific extension to build more engagement and really peak how well they're doing. And we all know small, medium-sized businesses, the discipline around the sales process is usually lacking. So I agree with you, Chad. It's an awesome opportunity.
Okay, well, today I want to actually, before we get into the live demo, I just want to walk you through some of the most important changes in terms of looking at this from a screenshot standpoint. We're trying a slightly different format so we can actually get this content out to people from a screenshot and a presentation standpoint. The first change is on the analytics screen under the sales tab. What we've done here is we've added in projected data. So prior to this change, the current month was always showing just the actual month-to-date data. We actually felt that it would be more useful to get a chance to look at how we were doing against previous months. And so yes, you can do that in your head. Hey, we're halfway through the month, is double where we are, but we thought it would be useful to actually go ahead and do a straight line projection to kind of be able to gauge, a quarter of the way through the month or a third of the way through the month, how are we going to end up compared to previous months. So that change has been made and is live in everyone's dashboards. The other thing that we've done is we've added the ability to click on any one of the mediums and actually change the graph at the top so that it gives you a breakdown of how that particular medium is trending over time. So if you want to know how are your organic leads actually trending over time, both the phone leads and the web leads, you can just click on this little graph button next to either the medium, the month-to-date web leads by medium, or month-to-date phone calls by medium, and it will actually update the graph at the top. And we'll do a demo of that in just a minute. The next change that we've made is on the lead screen itself. So this screen is going to look a little different than it did before this month. And the two main changes are that we now, we'll talk about this in a minute, but we now have the ability to convert phone calls into web leads or into leads. So that now you see this indicator here on the left in this ID column. If it's a little phone icon, that means this was actually a lead converted from a phone call. And if it's a little World Wide Web icon, little Earth icon here, a dot, that's actually saying that this was from the web to lead form. And then anything that doesn't have an icon is just a manually entered lead. The other change that we've made is we've actually added in a stage column on this table that is going to tell you which lead stage this is in. So we talked earlier in the webinar earlier this month about how to use stages. So you have a lead comes in and it's cold, and then it goes from warm and it goes to hot lead, and then it eventually, if you close the business, gets to closed won. What we've done here is we're actually giving you a visual cue so that you can quickly see where a particular lead is in the lead stage. On the phone call screen, again, we've used using a similar approach here. We want to a big part of what we're doing with phone calls is actually adding in a review process where you need to actually listen to the phone calls, and then you can score them as good or bad phone calls. And then if they're really good phone calls and they need to be moved into a lead status, you can actually convert a phone call into a lead. So some of the icons on this screen are showing you what the status of any given phone call is. So the sort of orange exclamation point icon means that this is an unreviewed phone call. A blue one down here means you've actually opened it once, but you haven't done anything with it. So you haven't marked it to be a good or a bad phone call. So in a team environment, you may have people popping in to listening to phone calls, but they're not actually scoring them as good or bad. So this is an indicator that someone's opened this but hasn't actually taken any action on it. And then you have good and bad phone calls. Now notice that I don't have any bad phone calls showing. That's because we have the ability down here to filter what we see in this list. So as you go through and listen to phone calls, once you determine that it's a bad phone call, and a bad phone call actually could be a service phone call or it could be a wrong number, we're mostly focused on sales here. So again, a good phone call to us is one where it's a new lead, they haven't called in before. That's a good phone call. But the reason we're not showing bad phone calls is we just want to get them out of the way. Now if you later on are like, I think I marked that bad, but now I need to go back and confirm it, where did that go? You can just simply click the bad calls filter, and click filter, and those will show up in the list again. Once you click into a phone call, we pop up a new screen here that shows all of the details of that phone call, and this is where you actually have the ability to mark the outcome. You can say it's bad, it's good, or if you want to leave it in the unread state, unreviewed state, you can click mark unreviewed and hit update call. If you do click that it's a good outcome, it's a good phone call, and you do want to turn this into a lead because you're using the lead system and you want to track all of the phone calls that come in as leads and work them that way, you can just click this button, turn phone call into lead, which will take you to this screen, which will essentially copies over all the information from the phone call, and then you have the ability to set the stage, to add a note if you'd like, to, while you're on the phone, grab someone's email address. So if as you're talking to someone on the phone, you could just type their email address right in here, and Adam and I are going to do a demo in just a second, and then click update. And then the final update that we've made is...
I have a few questions for you, Chad,
yeah.
if you've got a second.
Yep.
First is back on your designation of good and bad. What do you do with repetitious phone calls that when someone calls in and then calls back again?
We've been marking those as bad because really what we're trying to do here is just get an accurate count of the number of unique sales calls, so that when you do go have those meetings with a potential customer, or I'm sorry, with an actual customer, that there's not the that you're all pretty certain that the data you're looking at is good. So if there were 5 repetitious phone calls, you might want to mark the first one good and the other one's bad. That way you know that you'll have that initial phone call when they called in kind of indicated on the table.
Right. Okay, good. Yeah, I think that's a good point to make. That as Chad said earlier, the idea here is to have good, clean data. And so the lead itself can be good, but if that one lead called in several times, you only want that first phone call to count as a good lead inbound call. And so mark any subsequent calls as bad. You're not saying the lead's bad. You're just trying to clean up your data. I know that's been the source of confusion for some people. The other question that's popped in here, Chad, is related to the last feature you just covered, which is turn this call into a lead in the CRM Lite. And the question is, do you guys have any capability to assign sales reps when you make that lead?
That's a great question. We don't today, but it's something that we are very interested in doing. Again, a lot of what we build is from feedback that we get from our reseller community and their customers, but also we use our tool every day to essentially run the company, and so that's something that we've also wanted to be able to do. So that's, I think, is something we definitely are looking at. I don't have a date on it, but it's something that's going to be coming along the road here soon.
Yeah, I know it's been hotly debated on the forum, so if you were asking that question or someone else who had the same thought, please jump in our reseller forum and share your thoughts, because we'd really like your input on how exactly to structure that feature. And there probably are some people who don't want it or don't have multiple salesperson forces that are working through this. So right now we're gathering input, but I like that one. I think it should be in the roadmap for the product.
Great. Okay, so the last feature that I was cruising through here was just the ability to manually build a lead. So again, if the idea is that this becomes your CRM and this is where you're storing all of your lead information, there are times where someone isn't going to fill out a web to lead form, or they're not going to call you, that it's a person who's handed you a business card or has come in from a different source. So we wanted to allow a pretty quick and easy, painless way of getting a lead into the system. So that can be done by just clicking on the new lead tab here, typing it in, and clicking build lead. Okay, so I want to run through some scenarios with the live demo. So I'm going to minimize my browser here and pull up a browser. Okay, so I've got set up here, I'm in the VetHubs account, and most of you have access to this, and if you don't, you can talk to your account manager. I did a little data setup just to run through the scenarios today. So, if you log in after this, you'll see that I probably converted some leads over, and if you want to make a phone call in or submit a web lead or just play around with one of the other phone calls or leads in here, feel free to do that. Okay, so as you can see here, this is projecting the number of leads that I'm going to have in May. So in this case, since we're essentially at the end of the month, it's pretty close to the actuals. I've got a table here that's showing month-to-date leads by medium. Now let's just say that I wanted to look at how many web search engine leads I've had. I can show that here in this month I've had 1 web lead and 3 phone calls. Now it's not showing any history because one of the other things that we did this month is we actually changed the way we wanted to consolidate the sources so that the way we categorized web leads and the way we categorized phone calls was the same, so that we could actually do this sort of stacked chart of all search engine SEO phone calls and all SEO web leads. So that now is can be done. And just for any of you who haven't looked at your phone numbers recently, that you'll see in here. Let me just click over. So I'm going to go to the email. I went to setup. I'm clicking on phone numbers, and I just want to look at the settings on my Bing organic phone number. You'll see here that I can label it, as I mentioned before. This is where you set the ring at number. You can set whether you want to record the phone call or not. But down here, you'll notice that under medium, I've got a new set of options here. So we try to consolidate this. I know there's been a couple requests that have come in asking for a few additions or changes. So we're trying to create one universal list, and as you can imagine, that always there's always exceptions, but we're trying to get this to be a universal list here that people can use. And then if you need a further breakdown, so for example, if you did click web search engine, but you wanted to track phone calls from Bing separately from phone calls from Google, then that's where the label comes in. So all of those phone calls and web leads get grouped together under web search engine as its medium. But then if you want to be able to break it out back on the analytics screen and look at your Bing versus your another search engine, Google, you can see that here. So I had 4 phone calls from Bing and 2 from Google. Okay, so onto the lead screen. I'm pretty much going to cover most of what I did in the deck. I just wanted to click through and show you how I'm walking through these different components. So you can see that there's a number of web leads. Actually, I'm going to start on the phone call screen, excuse me, because I want to start on the phone calls and come back to web leads. So I have several test calls that I made today, and I'm actually going to go through and just do a quick review. So I'm going to click into this first one, and actually this is one I actually already converted into a lead, so I'm okay with that, because I now realize that anything that's marked as a good call probably means someone has reviewed it. So I'm actually going to go down and maybe just start looking at some of these unreviewed phone calls. So here's an unreviewed phone call. Now this one doesn't actually have a recording, because in the settings for this particular number, it was set to not record. So this one's a little bit hard to review and understand. That's why, again, if you really want to be using phone disposition, you should be making sure you're recording all of your messages. Otherwise, it's very difficult to go back and make an assessment as to whether something was good or bad. So I'm just actually going to leave this one in its current state, because, or I may even say it's just it's a good phone call, especially if I recognize the name. Let me go to the next one and listen to it. So I'm talking, I just recorded a conversation with myself, and I said, this is an example of a bad phone call, so I'm actually going to say that this was bad. And that could have, again, been someone who was calling in with the wrong number. It could have been a service call, which I don't want to really mark as a good sales call, so I'm going to mark that as bad. Again, it doesn't mean that, bad doesn't mean that it wasn't an actual customer, or it wasn't a good interaction with the customer, but it just means it was not a sales call that we want to count in our list. So I'm going to mark that as bad. And you can see here that now under this column, it's been marked with the red X. Now it's there for now because we basically updated the status of that phone call, or the outcome of that phone call, sort of in real time. But if I did want to clear that out, I could click filter here, and it's going to regenerate that list, and that one's now not going to be there. Now it's not gone forever. If I'm like, oh man, I marked that wrong, I really need to get back to that. Again, you can just click bad calls, filter that, and now it's going to bring that one back. So for example, if turns out that I had miscategorized that one, I could actually go back and now mark this good and update the phone call. Okay, so let's listen to, I'm going to leave it as bad. I'm going to filter it again. Oops. Filter it without bad phone calls. I'm going to listen to this next one that's in the unreviewed calls status. Okay, so this is an example of a good phone call we want to convert to a lead. So I'm going to mark this as good, and I'm actually going to turn this call into a lead. I'm going to check this box. Now, if you're not planning on using sort of the lead tracking system that we're going to talk about in a second, you can actually just mark the call good, and that's all you have to do. You don't have to use the lead tracking system, especially if your customer has their own CRM and you're just really trying to screen and review phone calls. You may not actually want to turn this into a lead. But I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and turn this into a lead. So I'm going to click Update Call. And I'm just going to, let's just say in that conversation that I realized this was actually Vienna Vets. And I know it's Bill Smith. And I got his email address. It's smithb@viennavets.com. Okay. I'm going to update that. I may even make a note. Looking for a website and SEO, hit update. Okay, so let's look at what actually happened to that. If we go back to the phone call screen, we're going to see it right here. Okay, so I'm going to click on this, and you'll actually see here that you can still change the outcome, but you can't turn it into a lead anymore because it's saying we already converted that over into a lead. So if I want to go check this out now, I can click on 9346, and that's going to take me right into the lead details for this particular record, where I can see that he's looking for a website and SEO, get his information there, and see all that. So I can change here, for example, I can change, for example, his lead stage, and you can see that. We'll go back here to leads. And now we're going to see the Vienna Vets. The source was medium, and we actually see that the stage that it came in on, that I moved it over to hot. That's an example of how you would actually go through and convert a phone call into a lead. Okay, so the next thing that we wanted to talk about is actually then going in here and sort of looking at our different leads and seeing where we are. So this particular Vienna Vets, let's open this up now, and let's just say that as we move through the different stages, that we want to make some updates to the account, add some records, or add some notes, add a new note, and all of that can be done right here through the screen. So earlier in the month, when we talked about using HubShout and the task system, there was you have the ability to be a lot more granular about assigning due dates and follow-ups and all the type of stuff that you can do when you're using the full-blown task system. But if you're looking for something a little bit easier, you're not looking at having assigning tasks and putting due dates on it, this is a great way to just simply go in, add some notes. This would be a great place, for example, if you wanted to convert this one over to a lead, add some notes about the phone call, so that when you go in and talk to your client about how the call went and maybe some training things you could do, this would be a good way of using the feature to make those notes right here on the screen. Okay, so let's go back to analytics, and we'll just go. Now, one thing I want to mention is you might wonder, when I convert that phone call into a web lead, what happens here on this screen? What does it count as? Does it count as a phone call, or does it count as a web lead? And what we decided is that we want to go ahead and track. We want to only count it once, so that was important. But we want to be able to continue to remember that call came in through the phone, because a lot of times people, one of the things we found working on a lot of different campaigns is that people get so focused on web leads, but they don't realize how many phone calls their online marketing campaigns are actually driving. So we felt it was important to go ahead and continue to look at and track this lead as coming off of a phone call, even though we converted them over into a web lead. So they will be both a phone call, which is going to show in the graphs and the reports, but they'll also be on the web lead screen. Or I'm sorry, on the lead screen.
Yeah, we renamed that, I think, to make that a little clearer, because I know that's a confusing point. So the bottom line is there, we're not double counting, but understanding the sources of these leads is critical. I mean, how many accounts have we had, Jed, where people just aren't tuned in? How many phone calls? We've fallen prey to that ourselves. And it's important that you know that. You need to know if they're answering those calls. You need to know the quality of the hold time. Are they on hold for a long time? Are people dropping those calls? Are voicemails not getting responded to? These may sound like trivial things, but in an online marketing campaign where 3 or 5 or 7 phone calls in a month really could tip the economics of that investment from not working to, quote, working, having a return on investment, this is a huge piece of data to not lose.
I agree. Okay, so I wanted to, let's go back and just make sure we covered off our scenarios. We did look at a lead source. So we talked about looking at source of leads. We looked at a pipeline of leads that we're trying to close. We added a note to a lead, showed you how to do that. We did a review of phone calls, and we converted a phone call to a lead. So that's really the scenarios that we wanted to walk through today, and sort of show you how to take this new feature and, again, not only use it for your own marketing, but as we played with this and started to incorporate and use it more in our business every day, we really see how valuable, as Adam just said, the tool is to actually be able to use it to actually coach our team, as well as make it a product that you can coach. So it's a pretty important feature.
A couple questions for you that came in while you were talking, Chad. First is, when you flash the list of mediums, somebody asked, can you add radio and or TV as a label for inbound leads?
So you can always add any label you want. We do actually have an open request for TV and radio and newspaper, I think. So when I mentioned that we had a list of some other people, some list of things that people were asking for, those were 2 of the ones that were on that list. So those are ones that we've green lighted and put in the queue. We have to do a little bit of data transferring to make sure we don't mess anyone's old data up if we make those changes. So we do have that in the queue.
Cool. And then the other one, I think I can understand this. Can a reseller use the dashboard as different CRMs for different sales reps? In other words, could we set up separate dashboards where individual sales reps can manage their personal leads, and I could take a peek when I wanted to?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, really what you're talking about is not so much different dashboards, but different campaigns. So you could, in theory, have a different campaign for each of your salespeople, and then using our security and access tools, you could limit who could see any one of those campaigns and its leads. So you could do that today. And you could actually have, in some ways even do teams, although, when you wanted to get the overall picture of how many leads you have, there's not a way to, on the sales screen, to say, show me leads across these 4 campaigns. It would always be looking at one campaign at a time.
Yeah, I was just thinking that too. It sounds like it could get overly complex and may splinter your data in ways that you wouldn't like. It seems like if there's strong interest, again, like the previous question that came up on assigning sales reps, I'd really like you to jump in the forum and share your idea and your question with other resellers and see if we can get some consensus on where we'd like that feature to go, because it may be that through the assignment process and as we build out some more reports through the stages, we could accomplish what you're looking for in a more graceful way.
Cool. Okay, Adam, well, I think we had
one more. Actually, I have one more. I was just waiting to see if you had a follow up on that. Actually, 2 more. Comment was, this is also a tool you can show prospects. Traffic is great, but leads are even greater when it comes to selling SEM, so you should think about this as a sales preview tool.
I agree 100% with that. I think that this is, I think you'll find that there are a lot of people whose eyes will sort of, they'll wake up and realize, like, wow, I'm getting calls and I'm not training my team to actually take them. I think a lot of small businesses assume that their staff is well trained, and there's a lot of them that are, but there's a lot that just aren't. And we actually had a pay-per-click client in the legal space that was a fairly complex type of litigation, and they consistently had their phone calls ringing and going to voicemail. And we just were like, hey, look, this is, you're talking about a very complex personal kind of case. We think you should try to get some sort of answering service. So even just getting an idea of what is the experience, as Adam said earlier, what's the hold time, what's the experience of the person. For example, if they're getting like, you've reached so-and-so's cell phone, please leave a message, the impression that's leaving is that this company is fly by night. It's not really it's not a legit business. So I think you can help people coach people through that, and that's a really valuable service.
Cool. Now, the last comment I've got for you here, Chad. Can we add countries such as United Kingdom to the new lead page? Alternatively, could we have an example such as an international lead instead of the state drop down? This would be really helpful for international guys like me who are reselling across the pond.
Yep. We continue to our overseas guys continue to school us on how us in the U.S. don't really don't consider the rest of the English-speaking world. So we are working on that because that's something that we do want to incorporate. But I'm sure that as you guys have run into before, we built this primarily with the U.S. in mind. But what we've realized is that there's a great opportunity in Australia and Ireland and the UK and several other places that people have contacted us about. So we're working on that.
Yeah, and not to be a broken record, but jump in the forum. There were guys in there asking about phone numbers in the UK and Ireland, and we've gotten that up and running. There are guys asking about the web grader for search volumes in other countries, and we're debating that hotly. It'll probably get in the roadmap shortly. So we have been trying to be quite responsive because we do want to be worldwide, and the forum is the best place to cheerlead those features, and we've been picking them out of there and developing them as fast as we can. And then the last one that came in while we were just talking is this webinar recorded? I'm going to need to watch it again to understand it all.
Yeah, it is. And actually, before we go, Adam, I wanted to do that one test scenario where there's one sort of final way you can use the tool, which is to actually take live phone calls. So it is recorded. And we'll have it up tomorrow on the website under the resources, and then there's an option on that page for webinars, so all of our webinars go up there. We'll probably also post it to YouTube, but the quickest place to get it will be on our website. And then, but as we come to an end here, what I wanted to show is one other feature that we're using internally. And so there's really two different modes where you can use this phone tracking. There's the mode where phone calls come in and you're sort of after the fact coming in and trying to get a sense of how many good phone calls are coming in. But for us in the business, or even for your customers who really are looking for a tool that gives them quicker response times and quicker scoring of inbound leads, we've set up the system so that when phone calls come in, you can actually immediately pick up the phone call off the phone call screen and turn it into a lead essentially in real time while you're on the phone. So Adam and I wanted to run through a scenario, and I had left my phone off mute, and someone called while we were on here. But Adam, do you want to call that phone number, and I'll go ahead and move over to my VetHubs call screen here?
Yeah, sure. Just let me know when you're ready.
Go ahead.
Okie doke.
So we can kind of hear Adam in the background. He's on. Got a whole message here. Okay. Comes his call. VetHubs, can I help you?
Oh, hi. Yeah, I need some search engine marketing because my rankings have tanked after Penguin.
Great, we can help you with that. So as you guys can see here, I've just refreshed the screen, and I see a new phone call here that is under the status of ringing, which essentially means it's in progress. So I'm going to click on that, and basically he's pretty much qualified that this is a good phone call. I may want to say if he called in before, he says no. I'm ready to mark this a good phone call and turn it into a lead so that I can capture the rest of his information and take some notes. So again, we're live on the phone now, and I can come back to him and say, now, could you tell me the name of your business?
Yeah, sure. It's Vets Are Us.
Vets Are Us. Great. And I saw you're Adam Stetzer, right?
Yep.
Okay. So I can type this in, grab an email address, and make any notes that I would want to make here, including we pulled over that this came in off the web search engine, but now I can click update here, and I have this lead, and I can make notes and run with it. So Adam's hung up, and actually what will happen now is that once the call is completed, the recording didn't come over with it initially, but if we did want to go back now that the call is completed, you'll see that this lead here is the one that I just turned into a new lead, and you can actually listen to this phone call and listen to that whole sales pitch. So the nice thing about this is that you don't have to take down the information on a piece of paper and then remember to go back to new lead and plug it in. You can really get very quick compliance with getting your lead information into the system so that at the end of the day, someone can go to the sales screen and feel pretty comfortable knowing how many leads and how many good phone calls or what the status of different leads that came in today are by just using the system this way. So if there aren't any questions on that, I think that's all we have, Adam.
Yeah, that was a nice little demo, and as Chad said, that's how we're using it internally, and we're pretty excited with the roadmap of all sorts of additional features this could grow into. But as always, let's continue this conversation in our forum. Been a lot of good feature requests right here in the webinar. Post them out there. Let's get some enthusiasm behind them, and we'll go off and build them.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
We'll see ya.